so much, Tony, and dear FRC friends. I'm honored to participate in this special and long-deserved event to honor General Edwin Meese. He's one of a tiny handful of Americans who've had a tremendously good impact on our country and on our conservative movement. His conservative influence continued for years after he left the Department of Justice and is still ongoing today. When Ed Meese became Ronald Reagan's Attorney General, he faced a judiciary that had been poisoned by the Earl Warren Court's long series of opinions that were anti-religion, pro-abortion, pro-pornography, and pro-communist. All you really need to know about the judiciary of the pre-Reagan era is to know that when Chicago Public Radio WBEZ asked Barack Obama to name his favorite Supreme Court justice, he named Earl Warren. The reason Obama liked Earl Warren was that the Warren Court was dominated by the cult of those who believe our Constitution is a living document. Living was their code word to mean they could write their own social policies and political preferences into law, regardless of what the Constitution says. Ed Meese used his skill to bring an end to those unconstitutional heresies. A few months after his confirmation as Attorney General in 1985, General Meese made a remarkable speech to the American Bar Association. He criticized the Warren Court's opinions as just policy choices, not based on constitutional principles. He said the Warren Court decisions revealed a greater allegiance to what the court thinks about public policy rather than a deference to the Constitution's text and intention, and that a Constitution viewed as only what the judges say it is no longer a Constitution. Edwin Meese called on federal judges to resist any political effort to depart from the literal provisions of the Constitution. Now, those words don't sound controversial today, but in 1985, after years of the Warren Court, they created a big legal and political controversy. Supreme Court Justice William Brennan, a major advocate of the so-called living Constitution, tried to publicly answer Ed Meese. Brennan came up with the silly statement that if our constitutional guarantees fail to transcend the printed page, then they are just tissue paper bastions. Now, nobody knows what that means. But we don't like the notion that our Constitution could be crunched like tissue paper. When Dwight Eisenhower was asked if he had made any mistakes while he was president, he replied, "Yes, two, and they're both sitting on the Supreme Court." He was specifically referring to Earl Warren and William Brennan. So thank you, General Meese, for having the courage and the legal skill to confront and refute those judicial heresies. The controversy you started caused us to face the 20th century's most fundamental question. Do we want a government of laws, or do we want a government of supremacist judges? Ed Meese took on the responsibility of reforming the judiciary, and no one, not even a Supreme Court justice, has had more impact on the courts. Ronald Reagan's later choice of judges like Jim Buckley and Dan Mannion were guided by constitutional principles. Even more important, Ed Meese created a deep bench of younger conservative lawyers ready to serve as the next generation of judges. He recruited and encouraged lawyers who respect the Constitution in the Justice Department and in other executive branch departments. He nurtured the Federalist Society to train law school students to make it respectable to be a conservative originalist. So now, 25 years later, as Reagan's judges retire, we see the benefits of Ed Meese's foresight. George W. Bush's judicial appointees, on average, were more conservative than Ronald Reagan's because Ed Meese developed a younger crop of candidates who would respect the Constitution the way it was originally written. We rejoice in Ed Meese's lasting influence on the courts. Edwin Meese is not only one of the most important leaders of the conservative movement, because of the preeminent role that courts play in America today, Ed Meese is the indispensable man in the conservative movement.